January 1st, 2026 was not merely another date on the calendar, but a quiet structural rupture in the global silver market that most of the world, especially the United States, failed to recognize in real time because while headlines remained calm and prices initially moved without drama, China activated a refined silver export licensing regime that fundamentally altered how physical silver flows across the planet, effectively placing state-level oversight on a supply chain that controls an estimated 60 to 65% of the world's refined silver through just 44 key industrial entities. And this shift did not manifest as an immediate price spike, because true supply crises rarely announce themselves through price alone, but instead reveal their presence through tightening availability, rising premiums, lengthening delivery times, and the silent withdrawal of sellers from the physical market, particularly in Shanghai, where premiums began signaling stress well before Western analysts noticed anything unusual. And the reason this moment matters so profoundly is that silver today is not primarily a monetary metal or a speculative trading vehicle, but a critical industrial input without which modern civilization cannot function, embedded deeply and irreversibly into solar panels, electric vehicles, power grids, semiconductors, medical devices, telecommunications, infrastructure, aerospace systems, and defense technologies, meaning that unlike gold, it is consumed rather than stored, lost rather than endlessly recycled, and demanded not by investor sentiment, but by policy mandates, industrial necessity, and national security requirements. And yet, despite this reality, the United States and Wall Street continue to model silver as a liquid financial asset governed by futures markets, ETFs, and paper contracts, assuming that physical metal will always be available at the right price when needed, an assumption that holds only until it doesn't, because paper liquidity is not the same as physical availability, and futures contracts do not create atoms of silver when refineries slow exports or prioritize domestic demand. And this is precisely where the January 1st, 2026 shift becomes irreversible, since China did not impose an outright export ban that would have triggered immediate political backlash or market panic, but instead implemented a licensing system that allows exports to continue selectively, strategically, and conditionally, giving policymakers the ability to delay shipments, reduce volumes, redirect supply inward, or quietly build strategic buffers while maintaining the appearance of normal trade, a method of control that is far more powerful than blunt prohibition, and one that Western markets are poorly equipped to interpret because they are trained to react to price movements rather than structural changes in flow. And this mismatch in perception explains why the initial market reaction was confusion rather than alarm, with minor price softness being misread as weak demand, when in reality demand remained strong and supply was simply no longer freely offered, a classic symptom of illiquidity rather than oversupply. And this matters because silver shortages do not resolve themselves through innovation or substitution in the short term, as there is no material that can replicate silver's unique combination of electrical conductivity, thermal efficiency, reliability, and cost-effectiveness at scale, nor can mining respond quickly to shortages since silver is often produced as a byproduct of other metals, making supply growth slow, rigid, and unresponsive to price signals, while scrap recycling, often cited as a solution, is declining in efficiency and volume as more silver is locked into complex electronic components that are uneconomical to process. All of which means that when refining and export control becomes centralized, as it has in China, the entire global system becomes fragile, especially for countries like the United States that lack a strategic silver reserve, coordinated industrial stockpiles, or domestic refining capacity sufficient to buffer disruptions, leaving critical sectors exposed to delays, cost increases, and forced prioritization. And when physical shortages deepen, the sequence of market responses is predictable even if timing is not, beginning with rising premiums and delivery delays, followed by increased cash settlement in place of physical delivery, erosion of trust in paper instruments, decoupling between futures prices and real-world availability, and finally, abrupt repricing as markets are forced to reconcile financial claims with physical reality, a process that is often disorderly rather than gradual, because silver does not reprice smoothly under constraint, but gaps violently when sellers disappear, not due to speculation, but due to absence. And this is why mainstream media tends to avoid sustained discussion of silver, because it exposes uncomfortable truths about how modern economies depend on fragile, tightly coupled supply chains and how financial systems often assume abundance where none exists, linking energy transition goals, defense readiness, technological growth, and monetary credibility into a single metal that cannot be easily replaced or rapidly scaled, making January 1st, 2026, not the start of a silver rally, but the moment the silver market changed shape, transitioning from a globally fluid commodity governed by open market assumptions into a strategically managed resource, where availability matters more than price, control matters more than sentiment, and reality eventually overrides models. Meaning that by the time the broader market fully understands what changed on that quiet January day, the defining issue will no longer be how high silver prices can go, but whether sufficient physical silver can be sourced at any price at all. If this video made you realize that this is not just a silver rally, but a structural shift happening behind the scenes, if it raised questions the mainstream media isn't asking, then take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more deep, research-driven stories like this. Because the future won't be defined by headlines, it will be defined by understanding what others overlook.